Let's talk about Assassin's Creed. If you've been watching me for a long time, you know it's a series I feel very strongly about. And with Assassin's Creed Mirage out, if you want to check out my full thoughts on that, check out the Before You Buy video I did on Game Ranks. But I did want to talk about it here, but also with the additional context of the entire series and where it's at this point, because it's a mess. I think it finds itself in a very interesting predicament or spot, and I kind of wanted to talk about the old games, the new games, Mirage, where that falls in weirdly enough. And I think just to start with Mirage itself, I feel like I'm in the minority with this one. It does seem like people are liking it. Ubisoft did announce that sales-wise, it's doing all right, but I was pretty harsh on it. To me, it's because I just really care about the series. I'm very picky, but I really liked the idea of it. Ultimately, once I played through it, I found it to be all right, a little boring, and ultimately it didn't totally commit to the going back to its roots thing, and it still kind of felt like it had the bones of the new modern Assassin's Creed games, and with a lower production value and like less story stuff going on, it just kind of felt like not enough for me personally. Now, there's a lot good about it. The fact that it did manage to be brave enough to actually go back to its roots in the point of keeping stealth and having it be mostly stealth focused, I really like that, and I'm just curious to see if Ubisoft is willing to commit to that long term, or if this was just their little bone they threw to us old annoying fans. And I say that because I am someone who, and I've said this in other videos, but for full context, I've been playing since the very first game. I was so excited about that first game, hyped out of my mind, played it. It was a little rough. It had some boring spots. Obviously, it didn't review too well back in the day at first, but I still loved it. I forced myself to love it even more. Then, of course, Assassin's Creed 2 came out, and behold, an Assassin's Creed 2. It's a phrase I use when a sequel comes back for a game that was all right and makes it so much better. And then from there, the rest is history. I play all of them. I enjoy all of them. I find them kind of like this weird comfort food type of thing. They get monotonous after a while, and they are a part of a bigger picture that I complain about a lot, which is bloated open world games. But there's always just been something about them that is special, right? There's nothing else out there like the Assassin's Creed games, or at least up until the modern trilogy, where now they, of course, went bigger, more open world, more action RPG. And I have been on record about how I'm not as big of a fan of those. I understand that they are good games, and I know some people that are absolutely in love with Odyssey, Valhalla, and I'm like, hell yeah, dude, I support that. And I can tell that they are good. I didn't hate them. But when it comes to Assassin's Creed, not the game I'm looking for. I feel like Origins kind of felt like a good in-between. Like it felt like it was still had its roots in Assassin's Creed, but was being a bigger open world thing. And then Odyssey and Valhalla kind of push it even further away from what I look for. And I don't dislike the games just because they're big. I want to put that out there because I see that a lot. The Valhalla, Odyssey in particular are massive, sprawling games. It is 100% for me. It's quantity over quality in that regard. But I don't dislike them because they're massively long. That can be fine. I can play an Assassin's Creed game endlessly, right? It's really just because it doesn't totally, to me, feel like those original games. So I was excited for Mirage to go back to basics. Now, I do want to address something and kind of why I wanted to talk about this off the cuff and kind of ramble with you guys, because I see the comments, I see a conversation online kind of bubble about where the common complaint of Assassin's Creed Mirage is like, old fans wanted to go back to the old way, and then they bring it back to the old way, and then they say, wait, this isn't that good, or like kind of like a what do you want? It can be a very contradictory conversation. Like I understand. I wanted Assassin's Creed to go back to its roots, and then Mirage to me was a little dull. It's not necessarily that I want a game to just be a complete remake of Assassin's Creed 1 or 2 or anything like that. I just really like when the games have like the core pillars of like what, in my opinion, they should have, what they started out with. Black box, open-ended missions, an emphasis on stealth, good solid social stealth, parkour that feels good. And I think Mirage kind of stumbles in a lot of those aspects, but at least it's going for that. I think for me, like what I would really want from an Assassin's Creed that goes back to its roots is just a game like the last few before it kind of switched subgenres, right? Like you had Unity, which for all its faults when it launched ended up turning out to be pretty decent. Then you have Syndicate, which I absolutely love. I found that underrated. Those games have the framework, the core feel of the original Assassin's Creed games, but then they try new things. Jacob and Evie Fry with Assassin's Creed Syndicate, the whole gang war thing, even if some of these ideas didn't always work out, they were always just kind of adding things and trying to like mess with the formula flow. I also, full disclosure, at least in the early days, I liked the Out of Animus stuff. I know it's like or at least in gaming media, that was kind of like an unpopular thing. Reviews would always bag on the modern day stories and stuff like that, but that was part of what made Assassin's Creed feel a little different. That's what fans kind of fell in love with, was just all the weird shit in Assassin's Creed games. So for me, again, to go back to it, I like the stealth. I like some of the open-ended nature, the social stealth stuff, but I also really like being able to kind of get lost, get engrossed in a chunk of history, you know, a city, a world in history, while being a hooded man stabbing people secretly, and then engaging sometimes with a wacky, goofy subplot that took place in the modern day. Like the idea that you are living old memories unlocked through the Animus, through DNA, I think it was a cool concept. And now the newer games, like with Layla Hassan, like they do try to bring back some interesting modern day stuff. But for me at this point, it's gone too far flung. At this point, I'm checked out. As much as I still keep up with the new games, I can't anymore. It's just kind of gotten a little too far away from where it was going. And like, I like where it gets complicated and I like when the Isus are involved. But I think it was like after Black Flag, it started to get a little too messy in my opinion, without getting like too into the weeds. But essentially the shock or the surprise of these mythical high science fiction concepts wore off. At first, it's really cool and interesting, but in the later games where it decided to be all about that, the luster wears off, and I just couldn't find it as interesting or intriguing. My big question is like, where does Assassin's Creed go next, right? Because again, I think that they're going to continue doing the new style of Assassin's Creed games. The Valhalla, the Odyssey, the Origins. Those make more money than ever for the franchise. They are big deals. People are clearly loving them, and that's fine and well and good. But what was the mindset here with this little return to roots throwback Mirage game that isn't quite throwbacky enough for me? I know it was originally intended as a DLC that they ended up deciding to break out and make into a full game. In my opinion, it still kind of feels like that. So it does make me wonder, was this just a fun side project diversion for Ubisoft, or are we going to see two branching types of genre? I mean, they want to go all in. They already oversaturate with games sometimes in their franchises. Are we going to see big, massive open world action RPG Assassin's Creed games and then smaller scale weirder ones? I'm curious to see if that ends up being a thing. Almost like maybe if Mirage sells well enough, they will consider something like that. Other than that, I do think that it might just end up being a weird footnote in the new Assassin's Creed history. But I still say, and this might sound like a repetitive phrase, I've seen it come up in other reviews, but like, it was a step in the right direction, at least, if they made a Mirage 2 and kind of deepened it, better story, better feeling combat, parkour, and just something to it that makes it a little different, some little dot of creativity there. They could be onto something as a sub spin-off Assassin's Creed genre. But if you ask me, if you want to throw, what's the phrase? Throw the baby out the window. Throw the whatever. If you want to completely just get my real opinion, I start over. I know people, and I've said this on the Friends Per Second podcast. Shout out to that podcast I do with my friends. If you haven't seen it yet, I'd love for you to check it out. We interview cool developers and just talk about games. I love it. I'm immensely proud of that project. But I did say this on there. I know people are over reboots and remakes and stuff like that, but I think if there is one series that needs it, it is Assassin's Creed. For me, I would love to see the series reboot. I don't necessarily mean a new Assassin's Creed 2. I just mean cut that lore, scrap that shit, start from square one, start from the basics, and build on something compelling. They were onto something with Desmond, of course. Everyone, you're going to hear that from every old player, like Desmond, and then like, oh, I could have transitioned to modern day. Like, of course, right? But I would like to see things fully hard reboot. Like they've kind of like reset or changed little things or told it in a fresh way in previous games. but it's still kind of bogged down in all the jargon and the kind of like too complex for its own good type story stuff. I see on Reddit, I know people still absolutely love it. So as someone who plays all of them, I still might be in the minority even more because I don't like keeping up with this. But for me, on paper, and like if you just like nerdy, like breaking down the timeline and like what ancient thing said this and the gods and who's not a god, who's reincarnated, like stuff like that, it is cool to go through. But I'm still looking for like a story in front of me that has me hooked and gives me a little bit of like I remember the old games, and this is kind of funny, but like when you would beat a mission and then the animus would break away and you knew you were getting transitioned out of the animus, I was always excited to see that because I wanted to hop out and see what was next and see what was going on. Was it always perfect storytelling, peak storytelling? No. But it was something different. And that's ultimately what I'm still trying to get across here. For me, by Assassin's Creed going full action RPG, taking some of the elements that originally made it unique. I mean, even, okay, now I'm just going on even more of a rant, but the hidden blade, okay? There's something about the way your character would move, how you would transition to a run, how the hidden blade would work in terms of your momentum, whether you were walking, whether you were standing, it felt different in the old games. And it was another mechanic that made Assassin's Creed feel simply like Assassin's Creed. Now in Mirage, or even in Valhalla, Odyssey, anything like that, a hidden blade kill just feels like any other game where you walk up behind a character and press square to kill them. Like it's very hard to explain. Like you have to feel it. You have to have like touched all of the games, but you know what I mean? And again, I'm not saying that these games were ever perfect. They certainly were not, but they made me happy. Those original ones were like comfort food. I still find myself going back to play AC2, Brotherhood, 3 even. Black Flag is one of my favorites of all time. And don't even get me started on how they should have just made a spin-off Assassin's Creed series called Pirates Creed, where they just took the boat stuff and ran with that. They could have done AC4 Black Flag, they could have done Rogue, and they could have kept going. But instead they decided to just take a pile of money and throw it to some studio to make Skull and Bones forever. All I'm trying to get at is that I like Assassin's Creed. That's what I wanted to talk about today. But the fact that I was feeling a little meh on Mirage, don't let that get in the way of you trying it and giving it a shot. I think if you are just a fan of the newer games and then you jump into Mirage, you might be like, oh, this feels like a little bit of a different side sub thing. I almost think it would have succeeded more as DLC like that. But it's tricky because it's like, it's not the greatest throwback thing or thing I was hoping for. Like, I don't love it, but I'm still at least happy that Ubisoft threw us something. So that's my biggest thing, is just, I'm curious to see where it goes next, if it goes anywhere. I like that they committed to stealth. I like that there was like a very simple skill tree, a limited tool set, you know, not trying to overly complicate things, but I just wish they were implemented in better gameplay scenarios, better AI, more compelling environments, stuff like that. So if we are having fun here, I still think a kind of like Gangland, Depression era, like maybe like Mafia era Assassin's Creed game could be so cool. If they go into like bootleggers and prohibition stuff in the cities, that could be so much fun. You could do like freaking cool, like John Dillinger, like, you know, hopping on the back of a car with your Tommy gun style stuff. I mean, they've gotten close with that. The fact that they had a full horse and buggy system in an entire London in Syndicate. I just like, if people are looking for the jump to modern day, I would love to see something like that as a good transition. But also, I do want to point out Hex, the project. I know that is apparently intended to be one of the more bigger, sprawling action RPG style Assassin's Creed games, but because of the subject matter and the time period, I am still looking forward to that. I can't help but like at least be intrigued, and I'm going to give that a try. The designers behind it and the concept is cool. So I'm not like shitting on the series. Like, I don't think it's down in the dumps. It's just not as awesome as it once was for me personally. It's not exactly what it's not hitting like it used to, but there's little things here and there worth talking about. And that's what I jumped over here today for. So thank you for hearing me out. I just kind of wanted to ramble about this. I finished Mirage, and then I've been kind of in between playing a couple of other games for review. So I just kind of wanted to fart out how I feel here. So let me know. I want to hear like your cursory thoughts on Assassin's Creed Mirage, But more importantly, like, where are you at with this series? Because I know a lot of you guys love the newer games. So let me know where you'd like to see those go, how you feel about those. Maybe you jumped into Mirage and this was your only throwback game. Let me know what you think. Maybe you're a weird freak who's been playing from the beginning. Maybe you want to have sex with the Isu. I don't know. But let's talk about this stuff. I think at this point over the winter, I think I'm going to go back and replay 3 because I know they kind of like re-released it, even though that re-release wasn't perfect. I've been wanting to go back to that one. I love that one for the fall and wintertime atmosphere. So that's probably what I'm going to do. But let me know what you think about Assassin's Creed. Let's talk about any of them down in the comments. I want to hear from you. Thank you for having a good, productive conversation with me here and not being shitty in the comments, or I just ignore you. But let's talk about this stuff. If you like what I'm trying to do over here, where I just yap about stuff I love or stuff I find interesting and just want to talk about, clicking the like button helps me. Thank you. Thanks for sitting with me. I'm Jake Baldino. I'll see you guys next time. Subscribe because video games, pizza's on me.